There we go.
Mi gente, you already know who it is. It's Danny Limelight. And I need all of you to subscribe to According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and all other platforms.
What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of talking to my friend. He is the major domo of Zebra Talk. He is referee extraordinaire. He's the one and only Robert, but we all call him Odie Brown. What's up, Odie? How are you?
I'm doing very well. That was intense. Jiu-Jitsu Island. What is that about? That was pretty wild. You got Danny Limelight on here. You got a great podcast going, man. Good show.
Well, I thank you, and thankfully, good friends. So, Jiu-Jitsu Island actually happening on January 26th in Galveston, Texas. It is a co-headline bill. It's a submission on the shore, which happens to be one of the only female-only, submission-only Jiu-Jitsu tournaments, right? Along with the Gym Crashers 6-on-6 tournament, and I think the prize is something like 10 grand, somewhere in that deal. And even for watching and ordering the pay-per-view, you are entered to win a much envied PS5. So there's that.
Much envied. I want to address to the watchers, the listeners, all the folks at home that I was not actually paid to plug that show. I was just legitimately interested.
Yes.
But my friend over here knows quite a bit about it, so he had a good spiel about it. But yeah, that looks awesome.
Thank you.
Man, it is so crazy how hard it is for people to get a PS5 now. They're offering them for everything these days.
Yeah, I think I saw one for like $7,500, and I was like, "Oh, I'm out. I'm totally out. Just good."
Insane.
Yeah, man. But how are you, dude?
I'm doing okay. I'm just hanging out here in quarantine land in COVID world, like everybody else. I've taken things pretty seriously. I like to kind of like, I'm not really a leader. I'm still very new in my like ref life, career, whatever you want to call it. But like as the Zebra Talk like head or whatever, like I kind of get like a little bit of a leadership role thrust onto me, whether or not I actually want it. So I kind of like took it upon myself to be like, I'm not doing shows until this is over. And I've unfortunately passed up a lot of really cool stuff, but I feel good about it. I haven't had any scares. I've been tested a couple times and it's always come back negative. And this isn't going to go away until we make it go away. So I'm trying to do my part,
No, and I appreciate you for doing that. I mean, and that's the thing, like there's so many kind of ways to go about it, or two different competing ideologies for it. Do what you do, and like do what you do. I don't fault anybody for doing whatever they feel they need to do. At first, I was like one side or the other, but again, I wasn't a small business owner that couldn't get a PPE loan or what have you.
Yeah,
so.
Right.
Nor did I have a like a UFC WWE TV deal where you had to put down X amount of dates per year. So there's that.
We see it like we're all independent contractors, but we're all adults, and as long as people are going through the right steps and they're doing everything that they can to stay safe, it's up to each individual person. And like yourself, I try not to blame or fault or point a finger at anybody. Everybody's doing what they can to bend over backwards to make sure that they still, pursue their careers and they provide entertainment for people worldwide and, chase their dreams. And you can't be mad at people over that.
No, not at all. And one person who's obviously have chased his dreams in his 25-year illustrious career is Don McGuire of The Fighter's Voice, who's I mean, interview. I mean, right now he has on Facebook an interview with none other than UFC and MMA legend Quinton Rampage Jackson. So shout out to Down McGuire there.
Looks like he's actually here right now too, saying good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned the entertainment aspect of, what we all do as independent contractors, anybody that's in front of a camera or, basically competes in any form of entertainment, right? But I mean, wrestling is something that's near and dear to my heart. I know it's near and dear to yours. So, I mean, how did that come about? How did that, come across, a pre-Odie, but a young Robert Brown? How does he basically get involved or at least see and cognizant of the great sport of professional wrestling?
Well, the sport of kings, as we like to call it. I was actually at a friend of mine's house, and we were just kind of flipping through channels, and neither one of us knew what wrestling was. Neither one of us knew what we had found, but we saw, the big ramp, and we saw the lights, and we heard this music that was like really catchy and catching our attention, and like we weren't really sure what was going on. But then we saw like green fireworks going off, and I was just like, what in the world is this? And I the very first thing that I ever saw was X-Pac making his entrance and like jumping up in the air and doing the chops and the fireworks and stuff like that. And I have no idea when it was. I know I was like 7 years old, so like, well, no, 7 would have been like 96, and he's not there yet. So I don't know. Let's call it like 97, 98. But I don't actually like start watching wrestling until Survivor Series of '99. I saw him get hit by the car, and that was like what launched me into my like wrestling fandom. And yeah, just dove in head first and watched absolutely everything that I could. I was a WWF guy first and foremost, but like I was obsessed with wrestling. So my sister was my first wrestling friend. I stuck with it a little bit longer than she did. But she would sit in one room and watch, either Nitro or Raw, and I would sit in the other and watch the other, and we just kind of yell at each other like, "Get over here! Get over here! Get over here!" As things were going on. So that was how that went.
Well, I love it, and it's funny you said it propelled you. Well, that kind of car crash kind of propelled Steve Austin, but not in a way that we kind of knew him to be, but the fact of the matter is, Rikishi did it for The Rock.
He did it for The Rock. Somebody was just talking about the Armageddon pay-per-view the other day, and I feel like not enough people really talk about or maybe even remember Rikishi taking that dive off the cage, man. That was insane. And then that one's obviously very famous. Like, most people probably remember that to an extent. But he did a moonsault off of a steel cage in like just a regular cage match, like 6 months before that? It's like, what?
Yeah, on SmackDown, I believe it was.
Yeah. Like, talk about the crazy athleticism for, first off, anybody to be able to do that. But somebody that's like, Rikishi's size being able to do that is like just insane. So you can see why, we're so endeared and enamored by professional wrestling at a young age.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Don McGuire, it's so kind. According to Woods, it's the only show that I listen to. I really appreciate that. That means the world. And shout out to the people that have shared, such as Jesse Velasquez, former IFS champion and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. So shout out to you guys. But, geez, I mean, that's crazy. And so when you saw like X-Pac and the green, the fireworks, because for those who don't know, I mean, he would do the crotch chop and like 1, 2, 3 and little X. I mean, like not little, but like X's would basically appear in the sky. Yeah,
behind him, and just frame him and the whole like screen and everything. And it was insane, and the music is just so wild and catchy, and you're just like, what is this?
Yes. I still want to go like, make some noise, like this is,
right.
And that's how everybody should enter a room. I think so. I mean, yeah. I'm just saying.
I'm a little bit more of a break it down kind of guy, but make some noise is pretty good.
No, I mean, so I also watched with my sister, but I kind of forced her into it. And funny that you mentioned X-Pac, Sean Waltman, Lightning Kid, or 1, 2, 3 Kid. And that's around
We're Six Pac.
Yes,
There's so many
yes,
names.
Six Pac, right? In the
Or just
NWO. Yeah, Six was there too. But I remember, and this is something that my sister and I would do. Uh, I would be Razor Ramon, and
sure.
she'd be 1, 2, 3 Kid, and we would reenact that fateful night on Raw, where yes, the moonsault. That was it, and it's weird because I think I've came into cross with Sean Waltman at like a Bellator at the Forum and whatever.
Sure.
And it's funny because like he looks so small. That dude is a giant. I'm 5'9".
Sure.
You know, and I was just like, but that was so earth shattering. It's just like, oh, the small kid, and he looked like a kid. And I think that's what. He was the Lightning Kid, right? And then he became the 1, 2, 3 Kid, and it was like, wait, we're kids too. A kid just made a grown up. What are we doing?
Association, yeah. I had very similar feelings to I think what you're getting at with my dad looks just like the Undertaker, and he was a biker for a really long time too, right? So I didn't see Undertaker as the Undertaker when I first came in. I came in late '99, and so my first introduction to him was the Biker Taker, right? So like my whole childhood, super heavy association with Undertaker and my father, right? So then flash forward, I leave wrestling for a long time, for one reason or another. But I come back because of CM Punk, who became like my favorite wrestler at the time. So when CM Punk, who I associate very heavily with, myself, and the Undertaker are facing each other at WrestleMania, I'm just like, it's like I'm fighting my dad.
Man, living vicariously. Yeah. I mean, oh gosh. I mean, that CM Punk, he is a lot of people's favorite wrestler, right? Yeah. He's almost nobody's favorite MMA fighter.
Yeah, but I mean, what are you gonna do when you go in and that happens? I mean, like
but
people
he
do
did it
from pro wrestling to MMA, and I feel like I'm not trying to like say he's a good MMA fighter. I'm not, but like I think he catches more flack for being a bad MMA fighter, or not necessarily bad, but like not as successful as he could have been than other pro wrestlers that have tried to do MMA. We've got like Alberto Del Rio tried to do MMA, and I think Batista tried to do MMA at some point. And like, everybody just kind of like sweeps those. Yeah, exactly.
Kid Cash, Bobby Lashley, obviously, Shayna Baszler coming from MMA, and that to me that speaks to the vitality, right, of Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler could come in and secure bigger paydays than they did actually fighting. I look at a guy like Blake Troop, and I'm like, yeah, that's what you want to be, and one of the reasons why Conor McGregor is on top, because again, on the mic, he's money. On the stick, he's money. And again, where do you hear those euphemisms? On the stick, you're money. Well, that's pro wrestling.
Somebody can be an amazing MMA fighter. Somebody can be an amazing pro wrestler, or just, amateur collegiate wrestler, whatever you want to call it. But nobody really transcends into that multi-million-dollar like upper echelon until they figure out how to bring themselves out of their shell and how to do the pro wrestling part, like you're talking about, how to cut a promo on somebody, how to talk a bunch of crap on the mic, how to have those face-offs and confrontation. And like how many times have we seen the guy doing the rock paper scissors onto the guy that's like doing the face-off with him? I'm sure you know exactly who that is, right? Yeah. But anyway.
Well, and I think this is also a touchstone of pro wrestling and what I like to call the pop culture lexicon. Anybody that even assumes, and is a fan of pro wrestling in other sports, they end up doing well. Famously, obviously Floyd Mayweather, was a part of WrestleMania, and he grew up a fan of pro wrestling. But Muhammad Ali, he basically grew up watching Gorgeous George, right? Mike Tyson grew up in New York watching Bruno Sammartino, right? And again, those are like once in a generation type talents, and again, their persona almost engulfed their badassery in the ring. Yeah.
I think that word vomit. Just to jump onto what it is that you're saying, like, people kind of transcend into that higher category of like, they become icons when they discover how to express themselves in a better way, and like I'm not doing very well right now. But it also kind of like reminds me of like, if you think about in business, it's almost like diversifying your income, right? Like
Right.
if you have multiple sources of like passive income, like if you're in front of multiple different like media streams and things like that, it's like musicians that become actors or clothing designers or whatever it is. If professional wrestler or a professional fighter transitions over to the other one, you just open yourself up to a whole nother world of income, of fans, of content that you would have never had before. So it makes sense that, people who give pro wrestling a shot or vice versa would become an even bigger star.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope like nobody faults the Conor McGregor for leaving MMA, to fight Floyd and then essentially build a whiskey company from the ground up, and that is literally outselling in North America.
Yeah.
Jameson whiskey that has been around probably older than this country.
I mean, if you want to like, look at some kind of influences of that, like look at what's going on with The Rock right now. The Rock created a tequila company that like nobody saw that coming out of anywhere, but like it's killing. And he just like the other day announced that he's releasing an energy drink now. So I'm sure that's going to be on every shelf in America in the next 5 months or so. Like, so it makes sense, You do something that you're really good at until you kind of let that thing run its course, and then you move on to something else.
Absolutely. So, it's crazy that, CM Punk was kind of your entry back into professional wrestling. And it's funny because, like, you dug the Biker Taker and there was a strong resemblance to your dad. I grew up, I watched all the wrestling that I could as a kid, but sure. I would take a bathroom break every time the Undertaker came out. Man, he scared the bejesus out of me. As a 35-year-old man, I'm not entirely convinced. 35 with a wife and kids, I'm not entirely convinced that I shut off all the lights, I wouldn't hear the gong and the sound, the shrill of Paul Bear. Oh, my Undertaker! And he's gonna carry me away in a body bag. Like that's just, that's the kind of the imprint, right? But for you, different era, right? So was the what ended up being the precursor to the Summer of Punk and that whole ride, is that what started the wheels turning for you actually getting involved in pro wrestling yourself?
Yeah, I think that you can probably, coin along words. Words are not my thing right now. Apparently, I've been talking too much this week, which is weird because I love the sound of my own voice, according to other people. Anyway, I attribute a lot of the rise of like independent professional wrestling over the last 10 years or so to CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, and AJ Lee. I think that them being brought into the WWE got a lot of eyes on the WWE that weren't really on them before, because there was something that had been missing for a long time. There was that attitude, right, that like kind of coined back to the 90s. And more so than that, just like really, really good technical wrestling and high flying and promos and things like that. Good character work. We're finally making it come back. And that was kind of the door that opened up, them starting to show footage of like ROH and like IWA Mid-South and, like all these other places, TNA and, eventually Impact and things like that. New Japan started popping up on, WWE television because, Punk comes in, Bryan comes in, AJ comes in. They all have like some of the most successful title runs in the history of professional wrestling, let alone just in the WWE. They were insanely famous and popular and just licensed to print money, right? So, you see all kinds of people come in after that. You see the Cesaros and the Sami Zayns and the Kevin Owens and the Adam Coles and the, just AJ Styles, like all of these people, Samoa Joe, that like you for years imagine that you would never be able to see on WWE TV because you never thought that they would give them a chance, but they finally give it a shot and boom, off we go. So how that applies to my life is I'm sitting here watching all of this, like so many other people on their couch or on the indies or whatever that haven't really ever thought about, like giving it a shot or anything. And I think it really made it feel like the doors were open finally, whereas like it felt like it was very, very locked down tight, like unless you were like a pro bodybuilder or a fashion model or a football player, boxer, like whatever, unless you were one of those guys we were just talking about that's trying to diversify and move over into another thing, but you're already bringing a certain amount of fame and success in with you, that you're never really going to get a chance. I remember in particular, like the thing that really kind of helped launch me, that helped motivate me into like maybe I should go to a wrestling school, was the documentary that they did on Punk, which I'm sure, yeah, I mean, you've seen it, I've seen it, I've watched it too many times. It was fantastic. And what I think people don't really pay that much attention to or give that much credit to is like that at the same time as Colt Cabana's podcast, right? The Art of Wrestling, like at the same time, if you were really, really, really listening to and watching those, as I was and as many other people were at the time, you were studying how to become a pro wrestler or how to become involved in professional wrestling. You go back and you start realizing that like you're learning the names of promoters, you're learning the names of companies all over the country, you're learning locker room etiquette, how to behave like in and out of the ring, like how to go to training, what to expect at training. There's a ton of information that like you can just absorb and use that as kind of a starting point. And that's, I think, what happened for me in a very large way.
Yeah, no, and I remember, man, I'm aging myself, but Pro Wrestling Illustrated, that was the MVP. That's where you would, in the back, see the arena reports and everything and see what promotions there were. Sometimes there were actually the promoters, their P.O. box and email addresses and everything like that. And it was just like, that's it. Seeing Roland Alexander and APW on Beyond the Mat. Those were like seminal moments where like, oh, wait, there's, because again, a generation or two before it, it was essentially, you kind of express interest, they beat the tar out of you. And then if you stuck, then okay, I guess you're a wrestler now. And you started off much like yourself as a referee, maybe a commentator and what have you, as they kind of ease you in slowly but surely into a role of a wrestler, right? So, it's crazy, to kind of look back at it, because again, how vital that the independent scene are, and that's kind of the craziest thing with, I mean, there are many crazy things about the pandemic or whatever, but obviously to not have live events for indie companies or regional MMA shows, because essentially those were the tools to kind of hone your craft, to kind of make noise that the bigger promotions will kind of look at you, and you can kind of let your full-time job go and essentially pursue your love in combat sports.
Yeah, it's wild to see, how there's not that many platforms right now for people to launch themselves off of. But at the same time that might be the case, we're also simultaneously seeing a lot of people getting scooped up a lot faster than we're used to. And I think that, the competition that is going on right now between like New Japan and Impact and AEW and ROH and WWE, and like there's so many options right now that are all trying to make like a real like viable bid for, like the top spots, that, they're just kind of like, oh, they're good. Got them. Oh, they're good. Got them. Oh, that one. Get them before they do. Like boom, 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 boom. Primetime Live is a really good example. How many people have we seen go literally from 1 week on Primetime Live to the next week they're on Dark? Yeah. Like it happened so many times I lost count over the last 6 months. So yes, the indies are not what they were, but it's also forcing everybody in wrestling to really pay attention to what is there right now.
No, absolutely. So, you're kind of seeing what independents are around or what have you, but how do you kind of decide? I mean, did you go to a school? I mean, how did you start your career in the business?
So I have a kind of common but unique way that I was brought into the business. A lot of people are really shy about sharing that they were involved in backyard wrestling. I'm not. I got involved in backyard wrestling by accident. I went to an autograph signing, and a friend of mine that I knew from when I was in high school was there, and he had encouraged me to come to a show where he was going to be wrestling. So I go to an address. He didn't explain anything about what I was going to be expecting. I just went to an address. The address turned out to be a house at the end of a cul-de-sac. And I was just like, I can't be in the right place. And I had my windows down because it's in San Jose, and it was in the summer, which, was like 100 degrees. And I just happened to hear yelling and banging. And I'm just like, all right, let's see what we can figure out. And sure enough, I go into the back of the house, and right there in the backyard, there is a wrestling ring, which was a legitimate wrestling ring at one point.
1932, probably.
The problem was that the mat that was in the wrestling ring, the boards had bowed so much that it resembled a half pipe or like a bowl that you would skateboard in. That's what I learned how to take my first bumps on, for the record. So anyway, I go to the show, and the wrestlers, like, I guess the promoter just didn't have like access to a ref at the time, or just didn't know anybody or anything, but I don't really know why, but there was just no ref there. So I, being the smart aleck that I am, I was making some jokes about it. And the promoter, who I didn't realize at the time was the promoter, overheard me making jokes about it. And he wasn't a fan. So he took the ref shirt, which they were trading between the wrestlers after their matches were done. They were just taking turns. Like, okay, I'm done. Here, you go ref that next one. He took the shirt, and he literally threw it at me, and he was like, if you think you're so funny, go ref. And so I did.
What?
And this is how I refed my first match, brother. I was a theater kid for years. I studied theater in college and high school, middle school. I've done film acting, and obviously I've been a wrestling fan for most of my life. So, I think he thought that I was gonna like chicken out of it, or just like go in and like, I wasn't good by any means, but I think he thought I was gonna like really embarrass myself. And I was like, yeah, I'll go do it, sure. And then come to find out, after the show's over, like, I did the whole show. I get into the back, which is the house. I'm in the kitchen, and the Good Brothers are coming up to me, and they're like, hey, you don't suck. Can you like keep coming back? I'm like, yeah, sure. So that was the first introduction. I did that for about a year and a half. And over that time, the promoter, who's still a very good friend of mine, the company is called the Underground Wrestling Alliance, or UGWA. We like to call it UGWA. It's still running in San Jose. It's been going for like 20 plus years. The guy's name is Anthony Trevino, and they are no longer exclusively a backyard wrestling company. They actually have started renting a venue called the Ritz in San Jose, which sounds a lot nicer than it is. It's kind of a dingy like punk venue, but I like it. I'm very like alternative society, which is gonna shine through a lot through my story, because I go to Hood Slam from this.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm doing a show. I'm working with them for like a year and a half, and I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but there's a ref named Sparky Ballard.
Yes,
yeah,
one of the Ballards. Yeah, he's the one that didn't wrestle out of the Ballard brothers. Yes.
Yeah. So he, in Northern California, for those who are unfamiliar, is like our Rick Knox. He's very, very successful, accomplished, professional, very, very like top tier veteran referee in Northern California. He runs a wrestling training school. He has 4 rings that he rents out every weekend when COVID is not going on, to companies all over California. Like, he's the man. And the guys that were wrestling saw him there, and they knew how interested I was and how passionate I was about everything that was going on. And they go, "Hey, that's Sparky. He's the best referee in California. Go talk to him. Ask him for advice." I'm like, "Okay, sure." All the podcasts I'm listening to are telling me over and over and over and over and over again, ask the vets for advice. Ask the vets for advice. Don't be shy. Don't be an idiot, but don't be shy, right? So I ask him for advice. He gives me some things to work on that like still apply to my reffing this day. But the thing that really was the most important thing was he tells me, if you really want to be a part of the professional wrestling world, you're capable of it. You're good enough like to go get training now. Like you need to go find a real school. Where do you live? I told him I was living in Berkeley at the time, and he told me about the Hood Slam training school, which was in Oakland, which was like an hour bus ride away from me. And I was just like, yeah, okay. So I went to school. Here I am.
Whoa, my goodness! But and that's, I mean, it's kind of traditional, right? I mean, you hear about Jim Ross's story, and he started out as a referee, and kind of like essentially the '70s version of a backyard show. It would be like those B towns, in non-televised events, right? And then you go to Hood Slam, and you're almost like a punk rock traditionalist.
I like to think so. I identify very heavily with like punk rock culture. The DIY ideology is like something I hold very true to myself. Obviously, like that's just what I'm about. When I went to the school, I mean, it is a real school, but like I say that because it's in a warehouse, or actually, it's been it's closed down since then. The owners have closed it and they've moved to a new location. But it was in like an abandoned furniture warehouse in downtown Oakland, with like graffiti all over the walls. And like there was like standing arcade machines like in the room that we were like training in. And there was a makeshift chain link fence wall that separated the kitchen and the like wrestling room. And like it was the absolute like last place I ever thought that I would learn how to do any of this, and the number one place that I would have wanted to do professional wrestling, because like they like to describe it as the headquarters of the Foot Clan from like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it looks just like that if you've ever seen the movie. Like people playing music and like playing jokes on each other, and there's a skateboarding going on, and there's just like it's just this grungy, dingy. Like I used to pass by people like selling drugs on the street corner, and it wasn't the wrestling people, but like there were just people outside that were doing deals on the corner, and like I would see like needles on the floor as I was walking to training, and like it's a little scary, but there's so much like grit and character and personality that comes out of that. And I think that really shone through with all the people that came out of that school.
No, and I mean Hood Slam, and it's still in operation. And again, if you guys don't know what it is, kind of let your preconceived notion of what wrestling is, leave it on the back burner for a while, and just put it
away.
Yes, absolutely, and just put it in the YouTube machine, and you can thank us later, or you'll be absolutely repulsed. But either way, it's going to invoke a reaction. You can't just sit and watch Hood Slam and go like,
Hood Slam offends a lot of people, but I think intentionally so, and not because it's like not PC. They offend old school wrestling mentality. And like personally, my favorite style of wrestling is like old British World of Sport wrestling. Yeah, Rollerball Rocco, brother. Like I'm a huge mark for scientific wrestling. Catch as catch can is my thing. I love watching NXT UK all the time. But
we're friends. We're best friends.
Exactly. I also come from a theater world, and I come from a punk world, so I have a really open mind. So like for anybody who's not familiar, Hood Slam is basically like if like video game culture and movies and music and just all kinds of weird, gnarly stuff got thrown up onto a wrestling show. But what I think really gets overlooked is the fact that like there's really good wrestling that goes on there. It's just, a guy that's wearing a bunny costume or like
Yes.
wearing a banana costume or whatever, like a ton of like inside wrestling jokes and stuff. But yeah, I don't want to harp on Hood Slam too long. Like I don't work there anymore. I had a good time while I was there, and I owe a lot of my career to them. But yeah, check them out if you never had. They're a amazing culture.
Yeah, shout out to the Dark Sheik for those who are not inclined. And it's so my favorite gimmick there, and we're gonna segue back, but I mean the Stoner Brothers. And
Yeah,
if you think it's a stoner version of the Steiner Brothers, you may be right, and that's
you
why I
are
love them.
dead right, and those are the guys that actually trained me.
Oh, this is
Yeah,
great!
yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, we should have done this like eons ago. You love World of Sport? Like I fall asleep to watching like the wrestler Billy Robinson vignette and Johnny Saint stuff. Oh
I
gosh.
feel you,
I,
brother.
I will try Johnny Saint stuff in jiu-jitsu
Yeah,
because I know that like jiu-jitsu heads won't do it and it works. It absolutely works.
yeah.
Like I've done the whole rolling in the
The
ball.
pump and the
Yes.
roll yourself in the ball and like, here, come on, come take
Yeah.
my hand. Yeah,
Yes.
it's
It
great.
works.
Yeah,
It's tremendous. Yeah.
I love doing this thing. Like, just not enough people go back and watch like old World of Sport, and I think like a lot of people, traditionalists, like really sing the praises of like 70s and 60s and 80s style American wrestling.
Yeah.
But I really, really wish that people would pay more attention to not just British wrestling, but like worldwide old school wrestling. Old lucha, old all Japan, old, like whatever you can find. Like just absorb as much as you can. That's where you learn.
Nick Negro Casas is probably one of
Yeah.
the best catch wrestlers there is, and he's Mexican and like literally a part of one of the largest Mexican wrestling families in
Hmm.
all of wrestling. And
Yeah,
it's just like I love it. I just love it, man.
I
So I
believe.
mean, going from Hood Slam, right? So I mean, what was the you're working shows? I'm assuming, right? Uh, did you kind of decide, or was it kind of agreed that you would venture out and see what other promotions would take you? Like, how does that process go from getting booked at Hood Slam? Because again, there's a lot of traditionalists, and Hood Slam isn't. And then you're like, oh, my other thing is backyard wrestling. That's my other form of tutelage, and they might be like, oh,
Well,
hey,
for the first couple of years of my experience, obviously I didn't walk in going, "Hey, I'm a backyard guy," and I don't consider like my time in the backyard to be a part of my like professional wrestling career. I enjoyed it, and it's how I got in. And I don't like to hide where I came from because I'm very proud of the fact that they had enough faith in me to give me a chance. And like it would be very like hypocritical and dishonest of me if I tried to pretend that like they weren't what got me involved. But yeah, when I like started professional training, that was the beginning of my career. So everywhere that I went from there was off of the training that I did through Hood Slam. And then eventually, we kind of had a little bit of a falling out, which sometimes happens with people when they, go to a school. Sometimes the school wants them to do certain things and they want to do other things. And what I wanted was to go as far as I possibly could. Um, and yeah, so like about a year in, I just kind of we split ways, and I didn't really even know if I was going to be able to like keep going. I didn't think anybody would book me if I wasn't like associated with a school or something like that. I had done a lot of shows like fortunately the Twins and the Hood Slam like banner, they supply a ring to a lot of people, or they just get booked to a lot of places all over. And I've always had a lot of ambition myself. So like between that, supplying a ring somewhere or going with them to shows somewhere or just trying to get booked on shows myself in places, I'd already made a lot of connections when I left. So I tried training at Gold Rush Pro Wrestling for a little while, which I really, really enjoyed my time there. I was sitting under Sparky Ballard and, doing their ring crew all over California and going up and down the roads, paying the dues and all that stuff, until eventually I was so incredibly lucky and fortunate that Championship Wrestling from Hollywood came to San Francisco to do a beer garden show to try and promote the fact that they were going to be on a San Francisco market for a while, or on a channel. I had heard through the grapevine and through, word of mouth that Championship Wrestling from Hollywood was like the best place on the West Coast to go if you wanted to be in TV wrestling. I'm not somebody who sets small goals for myself long term. When I started pro wrestling, I was still committed to being an actor. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to leave something that I'm so passionate about that I literally went to college for this, I'm going to shoot as far as I possibly can, right? So I told myself, I'm going to take 5 years. I was 25 at the time. And if I can at least get the WWE's attention or get a tryout or get a contract even, I'll keep going. But like, I want to limit myself, as far as like longevity so that I get back to acting eventually. So through that, the whole motivation the whole time was WWE, 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 WWE. Every single decision that I made, this whole process has been, how do I get signed and put on television? And when somebody said, hey, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is in town, they're how you get on television, I was like, sweet, okay. So I go to the show, and there's 4 referees that are already booked on the show, which is unfortunate for me. Yeah. But like, I showed up at the last minute. I can't exactly be upset about it or anything. So I tell them like, hey, I've got my stuff. Can I ref a match or something? And they go, oh, we've got like 4 refs, but like, hey, our ring announcer actually bailed. Can you do that? I'm like, yeah, I don't have a suit on me, but like, if you need me to go find one or something, I can. I've got a nice like black polo. They're like, oh, that's okay. Just do that. Make sure you get these things over and make sure you get everybody's, blah, 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 blah. And like I said, I was in theater for a long time. So I was like, yeah, I can talk in front of a crowd. That's easy compared to reffing, which like, it's not. Ring announcing is hard. I learned really quickly once I was in there that like, I would be fine just saying people's names and their entrances and all of that stuff. It's having to host the show that I hadn't really thought about at all. And that was definitely like throw you to the deep end. But anyway, it went okay. And so I go into the back and I ask them like, hey, like that was cool. Thank you so much for the opportunity. If you ever need someone in LA for a TV taping, I'd love to come down sometime. And they called me on my BS so hard. I had just gotten married 6 months before, and the next day was Valentine's Day. And they go, oh, cool, we've got a taping tomorrow. Are you coming? And
wow.
I was like, yeah, I'll be there. And I called my wife and I was like, hey. And luckily it was on a Saturday. The taping was on Sunday, which was Valentine's Day, and my wife had Monday off. So kudos to her. Like we're not together anymore, but like she was such an amazingly supportive person throughout the first like 3 or 4 years of my journey in professional wrestling, because she, without even missing a beat, was like, yeah, go, we'll celebrate Valentine's Day on Monday. This is big, like go get on TV. So I went down. I went down 2 or 3 times and didn't actually get to ref any of the times that I went down initially. I was just kind of there, willing to do whatever I needed to do. Nick Bonanno, who's a very near and dear friend of mine, my mentor, one of my best friends, he gave me the opportunity to be a part of a pull apart, which I had never even heard that term before. I was like, I thought he was like kind of mush mouth or something. Like what? I couldn't tell what he was saying. He's like, you're gonna be a pull apart. I was like, what's a pull apart? Like thinking it was some weird wrestling term I had never heard before, right? Oh, and he goes, Odie, when you cut a grilled cheese in half, what do you do with it? I go, oh, you pull it apart. Got it. Okay, I got it. So that went well. And then, just after like 2 or 3 times coming down, each time consecutively, they realized that I was actually committed to being a part of the show. And eventually the booker at the time just showed me the schedule and was like, you can come to every show. We'll use you. And I've been an active member of the roster ever since. And that launched me so much more than anything else I've ever done in my career. I'm so lucky that I was allowed to be a part of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. I will sing its praises to the moon and back. It introduced me to so many people I would have never had a chance to meet. I made a crazy amount of connections. I was on television. I was learning how to use the earpiece. Yeah, the time that I spent there was just like, that I'm spending there. I mean, I still consider myself a part of the roster, even though unfortunately I haven't been able to do a show since COVID happened. But yeah.
A shout out to Dave Marquez, who, I mean, again, he's somebody not just in professional wrestling, but for those who don't know, he's also the producer for Lights Out Extreme Fighting and its predecessor, California Extreme Fighting, right? So this is somebody who also dabbles both in MMA and pro wrestling. Right. And I mean, every time that I get a chance to kind of sit down with Dave, I just like, tell me more about Harley Race. That's like, how are you? First off, sir, tell me more about Harley Race, because like, he's just, and the fact that, I mean, you were talking about how you cut in, his in was like in St. Louis with Harley Race. Yeah. And again, that's just like starting in Anaheim with Walt Disney. Like that's that. And I used
to people outside of the business, they may not know David's name as well as they know Harley's. But for people inside the business, like David Marquez is like a very buzzword name. Like people know who he is, they know his quality, and they know the people that he's helped, get up to the dance. And I like to think of him as my Harley. Like he's somebody that I've learned an insane amount from. There are so many connections and doors that have opened because I've been able, after leaving my school, I wasn't really sure how to tell people where I came from. Like when they ask you, like, who trained you or where are you from or whatever, because that's a big part before you have your own name in professional wrestling. And I was lucky enough that David was gracious enough at one point to just tell me, like, hey, just tell him I trained you. And like that just blew me away. Like it choked me up at the time. I didn't want to tell him or anything, but I was just like, I know how important that is, like I know how much weight your name carries, and I know how much faith you have to have in a person to say, like, no, you're one of my kids. So much appreciation to David. I don't think he'll ever listen to this because he doesn't like wrestling, but
yeah. Well, why do you think I threw out the analogy of Walt Disney and Disneyland?
Well, maybe because he's obsessed with Walt Disney and Disneyland. It's like he was the head tour guide for like 17 years or something.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, I kind of read the tea leaves, right?
Yeah,
so I mean, it's funny because like, now you're on TV, you're or in a promotion that has a lot of weight. You see, not just on camera wrestling talent in some of the major promotions. I mean, he was one of the major proponents of like the 7 levels of hate between, Colt Cabana and Adam Pearce, right? And Cabana is in AEW in part of like the top faction. I hate to kind of harp on it because like after Brody Lee's passing, but I mean, that is like everybody is about, Dark Order, and with the talent, you should be about Dark Order. Absolutely. And then look at Adam Pearce almost had a WWE championship match this coming Sunday, right? And he's one of the most respected producers there are in Stanford. So I'm just saying, like, it does have a lot of weight.
Yeah, I mean, David's pedigree speaks or like walks miles ahead of him. Like if you sit down with him, you don't even have to actually hear him talk about it. You look around his living room sometime and the pictures that he has of the people that he has had come through his promotion, or the people that he's trained, or the people that he has like, an association with, like it's a very long, very illustrious list of people. And that was something that like did not like, pass my notice or anything. I paid attention when I was listening to Art of Wrestling all the time. I want to thank Stu Stone, Cable Guy Jeff, David Marquez, like he's talking about Championship Wrestling from Hollywood all the time, over and over and over and over again. And like, for me, that was just kind of something that was indicative of like, okay, if there are these like super professional, super well known, successful people in professional wrestling who are singing the praises of this place and this person, that's somewhere I need to be. And that was enough for me.
No, absolutely. And for those, and I don't even know if you can find it, but talking about that Art of Wrestling podcast, Colt Cabana's podcast, and punk rock and do it yourself. But if you listen to when Dave was on, and it's probably almost 10 years old, but if you can find it, Dave kind of lets the cat out of the bag on TV syndication and making
Yeah.
money from wrestling. Which again, if you're an indie promoter, wrestler, MMA fighter, anything, any type of content creator, if you can find it, because I tried looking and for whatever reason, it's like off of the internet or whatever. But that is probably like the Bible in terms of like being able to get paid and do something really well, with not a lot.
In addition to like obviously learning a lot from David and like being featured on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, I like to talk a lot about how being around another referee that has more experience than you can help you grow in such a huge way. So obviously, Nick Bonanno moves from Long Island to Los Angeles just before I started coming down to Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. At the same time that I start, Jeremy Marcus starts like maybe 4 or 5 months before I do, right? Just like started training. So the two of us converge on this world of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood while Nick's there at the same time. And then it just kind of turns into this like triple threat, like free for all of like learning and experience and growth that like none of us could have ever hoped for or imagined. But like, man, are we so lucky that we had the opportunity, because like Nick was learning how to do TV wrestling at the time, but he was also very experienced at television before that. He's a television set designer, and he's been on a number of like very successful television shows before he was involved in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And then he comes in and he's the head referee, and like just there's so many pro wrestling referees, myself included, that like when we first started, we were just kind of on our own figuring it out. Like I had Sparky around, I had this referee Guido that I owe a lot to, my friend Toby that was also a referee. They were around, but they weren't there in-house training me. Being there in-house on shows with another referee that is like similar in age and mentality and experience level just breeds so much success as a referee. It was invaluable. And then because we're all similar in like appearance and experience and like quality as referees, like obviously Nick and Jeremy are miles ahead of me, like insanely better referees than I'll ever be. But I just kind of got a pass because I was with them, I guess. I don't know. But the point that I'm getting at is that we all kind of like were pleasantly competing with each other. Like there's only so many spots. And like Rick Knox and Justin Borden had all the spots when we started.
Mm-hmm.
But then, Rick and Justin got tied up with Lucha Underground. And they were kind of tied up with PWG. And then Rick starts doing his thing with AEW. And like the spots, kind of started opening up and opening up and opening up because they were too busy doing other things. Or, like Justin's been doing his doctorate for a number of years.
Yeah.
Rick has a wife and wants to spend some time at home, so like it was really cool to see the potential that we had by kind of like motivating each other by knowing that like if I didn't get it, they're gonna get it, and that's good, but like I want it, so like I gotta really bust my buns to like get the opportunity before it's gonna get snatched away from me, because you never know when the opportunity is gonna open itself back up. And that's why you see Jeremy and Nick have both been regulars on New Japan now. Jeremy, Nick, myself, we've all done bar wrestling. Jeremy, Nick, myself, we've all done PWG. Jeremy, Nick, myself, we've all done Evolve. Like we're kind of like in this symbiotic neck and neck relationship with each other, where like somebody makes an advancement and then the other ones catch up. and then somebody makes an advancement and the other ones catch up. And I've like kind of joked for years now that like I'm really hoping that the three of us are all gonna like work for NXT someday, and we'll just kind of still be the ref roster from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood that just climb the ranks eventually together, you know?
No, absolutely, and it is absolutely true. You look at none other than Daryl Sharma and Antoine Brewer, D.A. Brewer, right?
Yeah,
Those are guys
absolutely.
who actually wrestled each other.
Yeah.
They wrestled each other as pro wrestlers, and then they both end up at NXT around the same time as referees.
Which now
So
they're incredible referees.
yes,
and,
they
like,
are.
so selfless with their time and advice. But go ahead, continue.
No, that's exactly it. But I mean, and that can happen. I mean, there's I think it was Andrew Thomas or Rudy Charles in TNA, and then now, and he's there now. I mean,
Dan Engler is what he's
Yeah.
going by these days. Rudy Charles, as you were saying, was very successful referee on TNA for a number of years, and eventually you just kind of like glean enough information off of the people around you, and you make enough contacts, and you just kind of keep going, and eventually, hopefully, the door opens.
hopefully, but it can happen. It can happen. Now, speaking of doors, right? You are basically opening yourself in the doors to a lot of zaniness, right? So Yaz Beats, who's a talented podcaster in his own right, he wants to know, what is the craziest match that you've ever reffed?
The craziest match that I've ever reffed. Okay, so like I've got a wide spectrum of crazy matches, brother. Because like if you're familiar with Suburban Fight,
yes,
a promotion where there's no ring and no rules, they just fight each other in a bar in the middle of a crowd of people. I've refereed an Invisible Man versus an Invisible Man for my final in training. I've refereed each one of the twins had a stuffed horse as their tag team partner, and they wrestled each other in a tag team match like that. Yeah. I've done some weird stuff, brother. When you're a ref, you just kind of go out there and you do your thing. If you're familiar with the Priscilla Kelly tampon spot, I was the ref in that.
What?
Yeah. Nick and I were both refereeing that match. Yeah. That Suburban Fight. We usually do two refs at once because we do crowd control. But craziest match I've ever reffed. Gosh.
I mean, that Priscilla Kelly one, that's kind of up there.
I mean, that's pretty up there. That was a pretty wild one. I think
that made TMZ.
Yeah.
Like I mean, that and Arquette, getting gashed by Nick Gage. Those are
I was going to say, like, I the majority of the stuff that's the craziest stuff, I've been around for it and not necessarily been the referee for it, because like I was there the night that Arquette got gashed open and was watching that and like had to help, get him to the back or whatever. And then like what doesn't really get talked about is that same night was the night that Marco Stunt broke his leg.
Yes, that too.
And that same night, Facade and DJZ were wrestling on Suburban Fight later on, and Facade did a 450 out of the rafters and broke the ankle of somebody that was catching him. Yep. All three of those were in one night.
Yes.
It was insane. It was like that show was haunted. We were like, what is going on? I'm like carrying this guy with his broken ankle on a door out the thing to the it was quite an experience. My craziest match other than the Priscilla Kelly is probably like, I don't know, Priscilla Kelly, maybe like some of the stuff that I've done for Game Changer. I did a world title match with Nick Gage once. That was a death match, and that was like my only real death match experience. And like, I love watching death match from about 20 feet back. I'm not a big fan of being the medical line of defense for people who are intentionally cutting each other open and lighting each other on fire, but I'll watch.
An FMW tape in its era, like Hayabusa against Mr. Ganotsuke, that looks great when you're popping in a DVD or VHS. When you're in there, I'm like, oh,
It was quite an experience. Like when I first started working for Game Changer, the first show or the second show that I worked on, I wasn't put in a death match on the first show because the only one was the Nick Gage and David Arquette. But the second one that I did, um, they asked me to be in one of the death matches, and I talked to Knox and I talked to Jeremy, and I was like, hey, I will do anything that you ask me. I'm not going to try and big league anybody. But if I have the option to not be in this, I would prefer not to be in this. If you guys are okay taking it, that's what I would prefer. And they're like, we're not going to force you to go slide around on glass and, you know, count on thumbtacks and stuff. Like, if you don't want to do it, don't worry about it. So not, Jeremy took it for me, actually. Jeremy, myself, and Knox each were going to have, Jeremy and I each had one, and Knox was going to do two. And then by the time Jeremy was done with the one that he had taken from me, he was supposed to have another one after that. And he's like, no, I'm okay. So Knox ended up doing like double duty. But anyway, the point I'm getting at is like, after, you know, this whole experience of being like, you know, I'm not really about doing death matches, guys. Sorry. Jeremy and Knox had to miss a show. And so that kind of left me as the only like West Coast Game Changer ref that was left available. And I got to bring in a friend of mine, a guy named Ref Wiggles, who's actually the ref at Hood Slam now, as my backup. But I didn't want to be like, hey, brother, come do this show. And oh, by the way, do the really dangerous one so I don't have to. So that's how I kind of ended up, you know, doing a world title death match. It was fun. I was okay.
I mean, if you're gonna do it, you know, you might as well do it for a world championship. I mean,
might as well do it in the main event with Nick Gage in Los Angeles, you know, for the world championship. Like, and man, I've done a bunch of Nick Gage matches at this point that aren't necessarily a death match, but like, you know, he did a bunch of Suburban Fight and stuff like that with us. And like, there is nobody who brings that in energy and intensity in independent wrestling, maybe in professional wrestling anywhere. Like when the music hits and the crowd is just like losing their mind and they're just throwing him around and he's just barreling through people, like it's insane to watch. I love it.
Yeah, oof. Man, I could only imagine. And I'm actually pissed because that Suburban Fight, all of the Suburban Fights took place at the Hi-Hat in kind of Eagle Rock area and what have you in LA. And I live like 10 minutes away, and that was the one that I didn't go to. I did, and I was just like, I think I've done all of the ones that you know, Taya and I forgot the name of it. There was Nick Nemeth's brother, right?
Pretty Boy Riley,
Young Briley, but never got to the Game Changer. And again, the shows that I didn't go to at the Hi-Hat are the ones that were all the rage. Not to say that the ones that I went to were garbage, because they weren't. I mean, I was there for the Johnny, I think they call it Johnny Heat or Johnny Nuclear that night, because it was Nuclear Heat Wrestling. Their wedding reception, and where they did a match, and it was just like they threw all types of literally dishes at each other as husband and wife, and that's how they christened their marriage. So only in wrestling, right?
Gotta love wrestling, right?
Yes. Now, for somebody, and again, the ethos for a ref is to kind of be sight unseen until you need to be seen, right? But you started in the mindset of punk rock, your own line, Zebra Talk. How did that come about?
So Zebra Talk was like a crazy organic accident. I like to say that like a lot of my career has just been a convenient accident with a lot of like preparation and ambition and like determination and like drive to be successful in some way, right? Like I accidentally found myself in backyard wrestling. I accidentally met Sparky once. I accidentally got to do the announcing for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, and then accidentally ended up on a show the next day on Valentine's Day. It's all just this like, I have a credo that I like to follow personally. That's I like to say yes to life. Life is going to give you a lot of opportunities, and it's going to give you a lot of doors to walk through, and it's up to you to, as long as you're safe and making sure that, you know, you're going down a path that like is a path that you want to go down, to walk down that path, right? So anyway, that's a long-winded way of
No,
explaining.
I love it though. I love it
I
because
appreciate
right now people are trying to figure out, right, where if you were kind of hanging on for a relationship, if you're kind of hanging on for a position or a pay raise or whatever, that is not, for the first time in history across the board, that not might not be an option, right? So that's kind of what I want to get to is, you know, that kind of like, I can depend on no one else but myself, right?
Yeah.
Because people need to hear that. There's young Odies out there that they don't even know, and they need your story to kind of pull them out of the doldrums.
So the way that Zebra Talk came about was I was at home one day, not really up to much, and I just kind of wanted to know who the other referees out there in the world were. I know who the referees in my immediate community were, but I knew that there had to be, you know, like at least dozens more, if not hundreds more, of referees out there in our country, in Mexico, Canada, whatever. And I wasn't even thinking that far, honestly. I just wanted to have like a chat forum where the referees could talk to each other, learn from each other specifically, and network with each other so that we knew who one another were. I wanted to know like what kind of competition was out there, but also like who can I learn from, right? Because like every time that I've met another referee in professional wrestling, I learn an insane amount that I've been like desperate and dying for. You know, like the majority of the time when we ask our trainers or the wrestlers that we work with, the promoters, whoever, you know, like, what did you think of the match? What can I work on? Blah, 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 blah. Like hoping for some kind of note. We usually get like, I didn't notice that you were there, which is a good thing. They're not supposed to notice that we're there. But if nobody's ever watching us, how do we ever get any better?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I made a Facebook group, called it Zebra Talk. I had another group that's still active called Comic Talk. Real inspired, you know, like names. But I was just like, Zebra Talk. I'll just invite all the refs that I know, and we can talk about, you know, like how to do things better each other and stuff like that. And I told everybody that I invited, which was like 25 people. I was like, invite every referee that you know, no matter who they are, where they live, what their level of experience is, if they've been a referee, are going to be a referee, or are currently a referee. I want them in here so that we could all kind of be together and compare notes, right? Comic Talk has had like 200 people in it for like 10 years. I'm not that motivated towards it, right? Like I like it. We post, you know, like stuff about like trailers to video games and movies and stuff like that, but it's mostly just like meme sharing and stuff like that. Zebra Talk went from 25 people to 300 people overnight.
Wow.
Yeah, literally overnight. I woke up the next day and I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold up. Lightning in a bottle. You know what I mean? Like that's an internet term or like, you know, just an inspiration term, but like lightning in a bottle is something that you can't predict, that you can't plan for, but sometimes it just happens, right? And everybody that's in that group now, it's been 3 years. We're at 972 members. We're almost at 1,000. We're on 6 continents. We got somebody in South Africa like a year or two ago, and I was just like blown away. Every single person that has joined this group has just uttered the same things over and over again. Oh my God, I'm so glad this exists. You know, the vets that are in there. Oh my God, I wish this was a thing when I came up. You know, there's so many people that like exchange booking information in there or ask questions. There's young refs that are asking, you know, how do I figure out the rules to this? Or how do I do this? Or what should I wear for this? You know, like Aubrey Edwards is in there right now talking about, we had a Q&A session at the beginning of COVID. I organized 50 one-hour sessions with referees from all over the world, a different referee every day for 50 days. And it was people, we have just about every referee that is in professional wrestling in the group, you know, from like WWE, NXT, AEW, ROH, like all the way down to somebody that just started training yesterday, right? So I organized all these Q&As for people to get to know each other because it was COVID and we didn't have anything to do. And I was like, we need something to focus on to keep our attention off of how depressed we are that we have to stay home. And one of the things that we noticed the most was that the female identifying members of the group were often really confused and frustrated about where to find pants that fit them appropriately, which is something that the masculine identifying members of the group never would have anticipated because guy pants are just, you put them on, right? So that's kind of one of the things that like I really appreciate. The reason I brought up Aubrey is she's leaving comments right now, like in the last couple of days, about like where to find good pants. Those are the things that like I would have never thought of, right? But there's a feminine identifying referee somewhere in Arkansas that doesn't have another lady around to talk to about her ref pants, and she keeps splitting them because she doesn't know how to tailor them right, or because she doesn't have pockets in them because clothing companies don't make female pants with functional pockets in them. So like things like that are the things that like I never could have anticipated were going to come up through the group, but they have, and it's been amazing to see, or like something like in a triple threat match, right? There's no rules, or actually, excuse me, there's no disqualifications, and there's no countouts. There are always still rules. Just because there's a no DQ doesn't mean there's no rules, right? So let me ask you this. I'm putting somebody in a submission hold in a triple threat match, and they grab the rope. Do we break up the submission or not?
Oh,
that is one of the most regularly asked questions in the group.
Wow, that would have been a break for me. But I'm also thinking like, it is a break, right?
Do you know why?
No.
Jimmy Corderas. Do you know who Jimmy Corderas is?
Yes, WWF, WWE great.
He's a member of the group. He came on there, and he's kind of been the champion of this rule. And he's given a ton of other advice, but this is something that like he has a very firm stance on and comments on every time this question comes up. And unfortunately, there's so much information in the group because it's so active so regularly that like, unfortunately, people don't see the answers all the time. But the ropes create a plane, right? And what happens inside of the ropes is the match. You're not allowed to break the plane and go to the outside and continue the match, or be within the ropes, which is what the plane is, right? So if something crosses into that, that is what causes the break. The person being counted to 5 or whatever, right? They're not being disqualified when they're counted to 5. They're being counted out.
Wow.
Stuff we never would have thought of or known if we didn't have a resource for it, right?
That is incredible. And again, imagine that, that ref in South Africa that is just like, wow. And the next thing, I don't know, maybe Great Power Uti is booking a three-way dance, and it's just like, they need to know. And they're the only ref in South Africa. I don't know. Like, those are things that you wouldn't know. Yeah.
Now, it's gone from, I keep the thing running. I'm the only admin, but the majority of the success of the group has been because of the people that are involved in the group. We've got a lot of high profile people, but we've got people that are, like I said, all the way as low as like, I just started yesterday. And I think the inclusiveness and the altruistic nature of the group is what really motivates it the most. So nowadays we have a ton of merch. People were really, really, really adamantly opposed to referees having a ref shirt, which I totally understand. Like, it's not people's cup of tea, which is why I didn't make a referee Odie shirt. I made a Zebra Talk shirt because it doesn't promote me. It promotes our whole culture. It promotes our whole community, right? It promotes our whole job. And the people in the group were like begging for a shirt, honestly. So I made the first shirt, and then that blossomed into more shirts. We have 5 different designs right now. We're about to release a 6th one in the next couple of days. We have a bunch of sweaters, zip-up hoodies. We have snapback hats that we just released recently. We have beanies. We have these pins that mid-card pins just did for us that are amazing. They just got released in the last couple of days. These tracksuits are about to be released in the next like 2 weeks or something like that. And the reason why we have all of this is because I actually created a nonprofit charity for Zebra Talk. Referees are not often paid very much, if anything. Dramatically lower than the wrestlers who are already being paid a dramatically low amount to put their bodies on the line for what they do. In addition to that, even if we're paid something for the show, we're almost never paid for travel. The majority of the experience that I've had nationally and internationally, I've paid for myself to get there. I paid for myself to go to Japan, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. Like I had an opportunity to go referee a show in Japan, and I wanted to do it, so I paid to go. But the point that I'm getting at is I created a nonprofit charity called the Zebra Talk Fund, so that once a month we have referees apply to it, and we give them a grant so that they can afford to go to a place that they've never been to before, so that they can learn from that place and then come back and share that information with the people around them.
Oh my gosh, that is incredible. And again, these things, right? You wouldn't have known that was a problem until you encounter it or have somebody that you're in kind of entrenched with, whether it be in person or, now digitally in social media, that is having said problem that kind of broadly encompasses like the entire experience. And I think it's absolutely great what you're doing, man. Like that's it's tremendous. Like I am actually at a loss of words because like I didn't know that there was a need. But then also like your story in Japan, right? Of course that's an excellent opportunity, but you're like, when you hear of like Terry Funk or Stan Hansen, like, oh, I'm getting my entire, kind of tour covered. And that's one thing that, like, what are the referees doing? We hear about the tour buses of the boys. Are the referees there? And it's like, wow.
I mean, I don't fault Game Changer at all for not paying for my ticket. They offered me an opportunity to go, and like, I'm one of, I don't know how many people, how many American referees have refereed in Quirk and Hall, but like, I'm one of them now. Like, it was worth the money, 100%, and they let me stay in their Airbnb with them. They treated me like a member of the family. I am a member of the family. Like, I got to referee 3 nights on the Game Changer versus Pro Wrestling Freedoms shows. Some of the best matches I've ever been a part of. I did Chris Dickinson versus Daisuke Sekimoto, which was like one of the best matches I've ever been a part of. It was incredible. So yeah, like, it kind of sucked that I had to shell out the cash, but it was worth it. And then I actually, no promotion that I've ever been a part of other than Game Changer has ever been comfortable with or offered to let me sell Zebra Talk merch at the show. And Brett, to his credit, demanded it of me. He told me flat out before we left, he was like, you need to print out 8x10s and you need to bring them with you. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm a referee. I'm not going to make any money. He's like, these people are obsessed with American professional wrestling, just coming to visit them, and they want to support us. There are people who have made $2,000 off of 8x10s. Mm-hmm. Print some 8x10s, brother. So I actually paid for my flight with 8x10s.
That's it. Yeah. That is, oh my gosh. Shout out to Game Changer for doing that. Shout out to you to realize that. And again, that paid. Oh man, I gives you goosebumps, man.
Right? It was a pretty amazing story, and like, not to like bring it crashing down, but like, that was the month before COVID happened, so like, I was on a pretty intense high.
Yeah.
I just done Battle of Los Angeles with PWG in like September, right before that, and then I got hired by Evolve in November. And then went to Japan with GCW in February. I was getting ready to do, WrestleMania week with Evolve, and life happens, but you roll with the punches and you take what you're given and you keep on going. And like I've had to spend a lot of time at home, but like if I didn't, I wouldn't have organized those Q&As with people. I wouldn't have ramped up the Zebra Talk merch as intensely as I have. The Zebra Talk Fund was announced in January of last year. So like the first month after it, or second month after it, is when COVID hit. But like luckily, because of all this free time that I've had at home, I've been able to really focus on like building the brand, diversifying the merch, and like raising a bunch of money for people that need it. And we've actually had 3 awardees of the Zebra Talk Fund at this point. We had a guy in Finland named Teemu Kitasari, who's a fantastic referee. He's hilarious. He works for the main promotion in Helsinki. He was able to afford to go to WXW for a tryout and actually got on the show that night. Adam Kennedy out of the Midwest is a very, very accomplished, fantastic referee. He used his fund to go to the collective. We had given it to him when we thought the collective was going to be in April. And then obviously everything closed. And I talked to him privately and I was just like, I'm not going to ask you for it back. Like I that wouldn't feel right, but like, let's see what we can, do with this, like later on down the road. And obviously the collective happened eventually. If you go and you watch it, He's there. He's on For the Culture. He's on Bloodsport. He's on Joey Janela's Spring Break. He's on Effie's Big Gay Brunch. And it was a small part of that. And then most recently, actually, this coming weekend, Game Changer has Fight Forever going on. And a very good friend of mine, Jesse, what is his last name? Jesse Fields is going to be announced as our 3rd awardee of the Zebra Talk Fund. And he's using it to go to that.
That's amazing. Using your opportunity to plenty the well of the next generation. That's brilliant, dude. And again, I wish there was a little bit of Odie in all of us, and hopefully with this interview, we all kind of awaken to that. Because man, again, brother, like you are a shining example of what our sport and our community is, and I thank you for it, selfishly, but also just I know that the next generation of pro wrestling is going to be fine because guys like you and others, right, guys, gals, transgender, like breaking the mold of what we think that the role of a referee is, that we're in the next 5 years, it's going to be completely different than anything that we could ever dream of. And I want to believe that Zebra Talk is a part of that.
I'd like to think so. And I'd like to think that like I am the way that I am because I was brought up by the right people and by the right refs. I've been lucky enough that Nick and Jeremy have been by my side almost every step of the way. We're in a group chat with each other and we're talking to each other constantly. I throw every decision that I have at them just to kind of like bounce off of them. Rick Knox is somebody that also like I've been lucky enough that like I was in California and he was there available to give me advice every step of the way. And any altruistic nature that I have in regards to like the other referees or wrestling in general, I attribute to them. I attribute to my mom, super hippie lady that thinks everybody should just get along, So shout out to you, Mom. It was her birthday yesterday. Happy birthday.
Which I gotta ask. I mean, there's been a lot of people that have contributed both professionally and personally to not just your career, but your life in general. So definitely get some shout outs out of the way, my man.
I mean, my mom has been a really big influence on raising me to be the person that I am. Between her and my dad with like my theater and my acting career, like they were very encouraging through theater and acting to follow my dreams no matter what they were. They weren't exactly stoked that became pro wrestling, but they eventually came around. Huge shout out to my ex-wife, like not to be a downer or anything, but like her name's Madison. Like she was such my rock when I first started in pro wrestling, like she saw me through training and through hard times and good times. And she was there when I opened the first box of Zebra Talk shirts. Like, she was a big part of that. Shout out to Kaya McKenna, who's a very, very close friend of mine, who's a wrestler now, who She was a very big influence. She designed the graphic for our most successful T-shirt just on a whim as a gift to me. Yeah, shout out to Nick and to Jeremy and David Marquez and Knox. Like there's Aubrey. Like I have some really Jason Ayers. I've been very fortunate to have some very close friends that I don't think I would have had the opportunity to have if Zebra Talk wasn't a thing. But like they are such selfless, kind, generous people that are always there to help listen to me and help steer me in the right direction and make sure I've got my head on straight.
I absolutely love it. And I'm going to borrow from a referee of the MMA ilk, Mario Yamasaki, and do this because that is absolutely, yes, absolutely. But for those who are so inclined, and I hope they are, but where can they find not just you, but everything that is Zebra Talk on the World Wide Web?
All right. So if you would like to support the Zebra Talk Fund, you can go to prowrestlingtees.com/Zebra Talk. We've got shirts, sweaters, hats, COVID masks. Every single dollar that we earn through Zebra Talk merch is given to the Zebra Talk Fund. I don't keep a cut. I don't pay anybody anything else. Like I pay to have our designs created and stuff like that, but like all of the money goes into the fund. If you would like one of these pins, or you would like one of these tracksuits, or if you are a referee yourself and you would like to apply to the Zebra Talk Fund, you can send me an email at zebratalk123@gmail.com. You can find the original group itself on Facebook. Find me, Robert Odie Brown. Odie's spelled O-D-I-E. I'll get you in there and we'll get you started, networking people, learning, stuff like that. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter. Also on YouTube at ZebraTalk123. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Odie1Canody. I'm a big old Star Wars nerd. And yeah, say hi. Let's be friends. Let's get you going on your ref career.
Absolutely, and let's be friends. And that's hopefully the prevailing theme that people heading into this year will have, because there is a lot of none of that. So be like Odie. Let's be friends.
Let's be friends.
Let's be friends. And we thank you guys for joining us here at According to Woods. And if you haven't already done so, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the According to Woods podcast, as well as, again, oh, you got a kitty.
Please support the fund.
Right.
Please support the fund. I need snacks.
And it's, did you want to or think about having it in ref collars? Because that's almost a Zebra Talk cat.
This is actually my girlfriend right now, Amira. This is her cat. And actually, I should give a really big thank you to Amira as well, because she's being like so supportive and helpful with all of the stuff that's going on with me right now. She really helps me, like I said, keep my head on straight and get all my merch ideas going. She's actually training to be a pro wrestler herself right now. Hi, puppy. Oh, you're gone. Uh-oh. I'm the host now. Stella, do you want to be a referee? You got the colors. Show them how you count. 1, 2, 3. And he's back. Hey, she's magic.
Amira is, your girlfriend Amira is awesome. The cat is amazing. And this guy wanted to say hi, and then he knocked off my entire production. So that's awesome. Okay. But this is Pugsley Fuggin, Fuggin.
That is the best name for a pug. Pugsley.
Yes.
This is Stella. Say hi, Stella.
Hi, Stella. There you go. I don't think we could end the podcast any better, but Fur Babies and a Zebra Talk is where you want to find it. Again, go ahead and subscribe to According to Woods on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Yes, we're on Twitch. And I thank you for it. But if you don't already believe me, Odie, you're subscribed, right?
I'm gonna be.
Damn right he is. So be like Odie, and of course like me, because I'm nepotistic and what have you. But if you don't take our word for it, here's Pro Wrestler Zeta Zang.
Hey, this is Zeta Zang. Make sure you subscribe to According to